What's up, everybody? Today I want to talk to you guys about variables, specifically DAX functions with variables in Power BI. Starting off, I'd like to mention some positives about variables, which include making your code easier to debug, it makes your code easier to read, and it makes code faster. So to start off, I just want to show you guys really quickly a distinction between a DAX function that has variables, so a measure without variables. It's going to look a little bit something like this. Of course, in the real world, a lot of times we'll have one DAX measure with a lot more lines and a lot more going on. But right now I'm just going to start off with this. So this is what a DAX measure without variables would look like. Simple enough. Okay, now let's go over here. We got variables in a measure. So this is going to be a measure with variables. So uh, so let me just explain what this DAX measure is supposed to do. What I want to find out is I want to take the distinct count of customer IDs, okay? And I want to divide my total sales by that distinct amount of customer IDs. The reason I want to do that is because I want to find out how much is each customer um, providing in my total sales, right? How much of a hand does each customer have on average? Now, in reality, one customer will give maybe 100,000. The other one will give maybe 1 million. Who knows, right? Whatever, magic numbers. But the point is, I want to know, out of all of these customers, how much am I getting from each one if they were all giving the same amount, which is, would be my average, you could call it. So that's what this is supposed to be calculating. All right. Now, simply enough, what do we have here? We've created two variables. Okay. And as you guys may or may not know, when using variables, at the end you'll add a return to specify what this is basically going to be doing. Right. So first, I put my sales amount over here, the calculation of my sales amount in the sales amount variable. Okay, then I took the calculation of the distinct count of all customer IDs from my orders table. The reason I'm going to use my orders table and not my customer table is because it is possible we have customers in that customer IDs in that customer table that did not contribute to total sales. But all the customer IDs that exist within the orders table did contribute to my total sales. That's why they're in the orders table, because they placed an order. So, uh, so I placed that amount in the variable named num customer ID, and then I placed the sum of the quantity times the unit price in my sales amount. Simple enough. These two variables have been created. Okay, after that, I specified in my return that I want these two variables to divide, right? So what happens with the divide is that the first statement you put the first expression is going to be your numerator, the second is going to be your denominator, right? So that's how my DAX code knows to divide sales amount by the distinct count of customer ID defined here. So simply enough, right? Let's say I'm to show you this code now. Let's say, and the reason why I'm going to extrapolate this, right, is because now you, as someone who's learning about DAX, might be able to read this just fine. That's because this is relatively short, right? Let's say we have a lot more involved in this DAX than what's going to end up happening is that it's going to be a lot for you to have to read, right? Which comes back to here, easier to read, which is a really big part of using variables, especially in a team setting when not everybody is contributing to the measure, but everybody needs to know what the measure does, right? So now we're going to take a look over here. Let's extrapolate this, and let's say this has not 100, but let's say this has about 5 more lines, right? 5 more lines. We created one big measure, and now for me to figure out what everything does, I need to read through this and figure out, okay, it's dividing. What is it dividing? Okay, here, that's what's happening. Oh, okay. Then I'll use my common sense and say, okay, this is my total sales. Okay, what distinct count? What is it counting? Okay, customer ID from the orders table. Okay, this is my distinct count of customer ID, and it's dividing these two. Well, let's say that we have 5 more lines. That's a lot for me as like a coworker to have to go through just to get my job done, right? And I can do it, right? I can definitely do it, but would it not be much better for me to have it like this, where it says, okay, this is my sales amount, right? And I have this written right here, but this is, but I can read this to make sure that everything's okay. But hey, this is my sales amount. Okay, what's this? Okay, this is the number of customer ID. And if I want to make it even easier to read, I can say distinct count of the number of customer IDs that I have. Okay, that makes things even easier for me to do now. So what ends up happening is that I, as a coworker, am going to have a much easier time reading, right? And variables make your code also a lot easier to debug. So yeah, that's really the main point that I want to specify here about variables, about how important variables are to make it your DAX code much easier to read and much easier to go through in terms of organization. And it just makes it all look much nicer and just easier to work with. Okay, thank you.